Imagine this for a second. It's Thanksgiving morning, and your daughter sends you a text saying she's not coming to dinner. She says she needs time alone, that she's staying with a friend. You're disappointed, but you understand. Sometimes you just need to be away from family for a little while. But then you see a post on her Facebook page, a photo of her in revealing clothes with the caption, "Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby." And something about that photo doesn't sit right with you because your daughter doesn't post photos like that. She's private, she's modest. This isn't like her at all. And then your ex-husband calls you and says the words that make your blood run cold. Her tattoos are missing. The tattoos that cover her right arm, the ones she's been collecting for years, they're not in this photo. Her skin is blank where elaborate designs should be, which means this isn't a recent photo, which means someone is pretending to be your daughter, which means your daughter might already be dead. Welcome to True Crime Stories by the Fireplace. This is the story of Jasmine Pace, a 22-year-old from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and Jason Chen, a computer science major with a clean record and a charming smile. They met on Bumble, dated for a couple months, but on November 22nd, 2022, Jasmine walked into his apartment and she never walked out. What happened next will make you sick. And the way police handle this case will make you even sicker. So settle in, because this one is a lot. Hi, sweet ones. My name is Grandma Kitty, and before we dive in, take a second to subscribe if cases like this intrigue you. It helps me keep these stories coming, and while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from. That's how we find our neighbors here in our little true crime corner. Jasmine Pace was 22 years old and living in Chattanooga, Tennessee. She was a community college student with dreams of building a future that included children of her own someday. Her older sister Gabby said Jasmine had a gift for making people feel seen, for making them believe everything would work out. She was the kind of person who shows up when you need her most. Those closest to her called her Jazzy, and the nickname fit perfectly. She moved through life with energy and warmth, fiercely protective of the people she loved. Her two nieces absolutely adored their aunt. And her godson Juan lit up whenever she walked into a room. She constantly talked about what kind of mother she'd be someday, how she'd raise her children, the life she'd build for them. She couldn't wait. And Jasmine collected rescue cats the way other people collect memories. She had 4 of them, each one rescued and cherished. She had a heart for anything that needed saving. But the Pace family had already experienced devastating loss before any of this happened. In 2016, Jasmine's younger brother Travis passed away. He was only 14 years old. An ATV accident took him from them. This family knew grief intimately. They knew what it felt like to lose a child. They never imagined they'd have to go through it again. And then November 2022 hit the family hard. Jasmine's grandmother lost a battle with cancer, and grief settled over Jasmine like a heavy coat she couldn't shake off. Those closest to her understood that she sometimes needed space, moments when she'd pull back from family gatherings to work through her sadness alone. Nobody questioned it when she occasionally went quiet for a day or two. That pattern of grief would become the perfect cover for something far more sinister. Jasmine had met someone on the dating app Bumble. His name was Jason Chen, 22 years old, same age as her, a computer science major at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. Clean record, charming smile, seemed like a nice guy. They had been dating for about 2 months. Nothing too serious, though. Not serious enough for Jasmine to introduce him to her parents. Neither Katrina nor Travis had ever met him. They didn't even know his name. And here's the thing about Jason Chen. People who knew him, people who worked with him, people who lived in his building, they all said he seemed normal. One person from the Chattanooga community later said they worked with him, said they still couldn't believe it. Another person said their friend lived in the same building. said Jason Chin had held the door open for them on multiple occasions, even just days before this happened. He seemed like just another young guy, a college student with a future ahead of him. Nobody saw what was coming. The night before Thanksgiving, 2022, Jasmine left her mother's home in Chattanooga just before 11:30 at night. She drove her white Chevy Equinox. She was heading to see Jason. A quiet evening with her boyfriend before the holiday. At least that's what she thought. She had no idea what was waiting for her. The next day was Thanksgiving. Katrina Pace was expecting her daughter for dinner. The family gathering was planned. The food was prepared. Jasmine had confirmed she would be there. And then came the text message. Short, simple, unexpected. Jasmine said she had decided to spend the week with her friend Emma instead. She needed time away from family. Now, given her recent loss, Katrina swallowed her disappointment. She tried to understand. Grief does strange things to people. Sometimes you need space. Sometimes you can't be around family. She didn't push it. But then came the Facebook post. Enjoying Thanksgiving with my baby, it read, accompanied by a photo of Jasmine in revealing clothing. Katrina's first reaction was surprise. Her daughter never posted photos like that. Jasmine was private, modest, careful about her online presence. Something felt wrong, but Katrina couldn't quite identify what. Travis Pace, Jasmine's father, saw the photo and his blood ran cold. The tattoos were missing. Jasmine's distinctive ink covered her right arm, a timeline of her life, marked in permanent art. Each tattoo had been added months apart, making them impossible to miss. In this photo, her skin was blank where elaborate designs should have been. This wasn't a recent photo. This was someone pretending to be Jasmine. Katrina immediately called Emma. Her daughter wasn't there, had never planned to be there. Every text message claiming Jasmine wanted to be alone was a lie. Multiple friends and family members had received similar messages, all stating that the 22-year-old needed space, needed time, needed everyone to back off and let her grieve in peace. But nobody had actually spoken to Jasmine in days. Not a single phone call, not a single voice message, just texts. The family didn't wait for permission. They searched immediately, driven by a mother's instinct that something terrible had happened. Katrina accessed the My Chevy app on her phone, a GPS tracking system installed in Jasmine's white Chevrolet Equinox. The vehicle sat in a parking lot at Signal View Condominiums on Mountain Creek Road. Jasmine didn't know anyone who lived there, so why was her car there? By the time they reached the SUV, darkness had fallen. It was November 26th. 4 days had passed since anyone saw Jasmine alive. 4 days of silence. 4 days of fake text messages. 4 days of someone pretending to be her. When they got to the car, something was immediately wrong. The driver's seat had been pushed far back, adjusted for someone much taller than Jasmine's petite 5'2" frame. Inside, they found her belongings scattered, evidence that whoever drove the car last wasn't Jasmine. Katrina called 911. Chattanooga police arrived, they took a report, and essentially did nothing. The officer's response would haunt this entire investigation. They explained that Jasmine was an adult. Adults have the right to disappear if they want to. There were no clear signs of foul play. They wrote down information, exchanged contact details with the frustrated parents, and left. Katrina and Travis stood in that parking lot, abandoned by the very system designed to protect their daughter. Their child was missing. Someone was pretending to be her online. Her car was abandoned in a random parking lot. And the police said there's nothing we can do. Adults have the right to disappear. Make that make sense. But Katrina refused to give up. She contacted their cell phone provider. Jasmine was on the family plan, which granted her mother access to phone records. The call log reveals something crucial. No calls had been placed from Jasmine's phone in days. Every text message, every Facebook post, every attempt to make people believe she was fine, they all happened while her phone sat silent. No actual conversations, just texts. One number appeared repeatedly. On the night of November 22nd, Jasmine had connected with someone for over 71 minutes, over an hour of conversation. On the night she disappeared, Katrina called the number with police present, hoping for answers. Jason Chen answered. He was a computer science major at the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. He and Jasmine had met on Bumble about 2 months earlier. Their relationship was casual, not serious enough for Jasmine to introduce him to her parents. Neither Katrina nor Travis had ever heard his name before this moment. Had Jason heard from Jasmine? Was she okay? Did he know where she might be? His answer came quickly, too quickly. He hadn't talked to her in days, he claimed. When they last spoke, it was only for a few minutes. Katrina knew he was lying. She was holding the phone records in her hand. 71 minutes. Over an hour of conversation on the night Jasmine disappeared. He would remember talking for that long. Anyone would remember a call that lasted more than an hour. But Jason Chen claimed he barely spoke to her. Before I tell you what Katrina found next and how she basically solved this case herself while police did absolutely nothing, drop a like on this video. It takes half a second and helps Grandma out more than you know. Subscribe if you haven't already, because what comes next is going to make you so angry. The officers present heard Jason lie. They heard Katrina explain the phone records. They heard a mother begging them to investigate this young man who was clearly hiding something. The police response? They did nothing. They left the desperate parents standing there, knowing that the one person who might know where Jasmine was had just lied directly to them. Katrina and Travis were on their own. The system had failed them. The police had failed them. If they wanted to find their daughter, they were going to have to do it themselves. The frustrated parents returned to searching through Katrina's phone, looking for anything they might have missed, and then they found it, a text message they hadn't noticed before. Sent from Jasmine's phone in the early hours of November 23rd. No words, no explanation, just a dropped pin showing a location. 110 Tremont Street, an apartment building. The message arrived at exactly 2:18 in the morning. Jasmine had never sent a message like this before. She'd never dropped a random location pin, especially not in the middle of the night. But here it was, possibly the last thing she'd tried to tell them before something terrible happened. Her daughter had tried to send her location, a cry for help at 2 in the morning, and nobody saw it until days later. The next day, Katrina and Travis went to that address. They knocked on every door in the building, desperate for information. Most residents answered. Most had never seen Jasmine. But apartment 210 remained silent. Nobody home, nobody answering. Then neighbors started sharing what they'd heard. A loud disturbance had erupted from that unit around 2 in the morning on November 23rd. The timing matched Jasmine's dropped location pin exactly. Screaming, running, chaos in the middle of the night. Somehow, and accounts vary on exactly how, Katrina and Travis made their way inside apartment 210. A notebook by the door revealed the occupant's name, Jason Chen. The same Jason Chen who claimed he hadn't really talked to Jasmine. The same Jason Chen who lied about 71 minutes of phone conversation. The small apartment was open concept, kitchen flowing directly into the living room. A hallway led to the single bedroom and bathroom. Most of the space was visible immediately upon entering. On the kitchen counter sat a small travel bag, Jasmine's bag. Travis searched through a desk drawer and found his daughter's driver's license and credit cards. He pulled them out deliberately, left them in plain view. Evidence that Jasmine had been here, proof that Jason Chen had lied. Cleaning supplies covered multiple surfaces throughout the apartment. Someone had been working very hard to scrub something away. The whole place reeked of bleach and chemicals. This wasn't normal cleaning. This was someone trying to hide something. Chattanooga police were called again. Officers arrived, spoke with neighbors, took statements, and left. Still no search warrant. Still no real investigation. Even with Jasmine's belongings sitting right there in the apartment, even with neighbors saying they heard screaming, police did nothing. Katrina watched them drive away, fury and desperation mixing into something that would drive her actions over the next several hours. She wasn't waiting for police permission anymore. She was doing their job for them. She went back into that apartment. Not once, not twice, multiple times over the next several hours. Katrina Pace entered Jason Chen's residence and removed items, notebooks, electronics, cell phones, a camera, an iPad, anything that might tell her where her daughter was. Travis searched outside the building while Katrina gathered evidence inside. They worked through the evening, two parents trying to save their daughter, while law enforcement sat on their hands and did nothing. Close to midnight, the Chattanooga Police Department finally returned with a search warrant. Finally, after a mother had to do all their work for them, they decided to actually investigate. What they found inside apartment 210 transformed a missing person case into a homicide investigation. Investigators noticed it immediately. Stains on the hardwood floor in the living room. More in the bathroom grout. Carpet in the bedroom showed discoloration. Spatter marked the doors and bathroom walls. The abundance of cleaning supplies suddenly made terrible sense. Outside the building, police recovered 2 white sneakers and blue trousers that had been concealed among the refuse. Jason had tried to throw away evidence. Inside the apartment, fragments of broken glass littered the living room floor. Furniture had been moved around, drag marks visible on the carpet where heavy items had been repositioned to cover something underneath. In the bedroom, investigators found marks showing where furniture had sat for a long time before being moved recently. The rearrangement seemed designed to hide a large stain beneath the bed. On top of the bed sat a kitchen knife. The crime scene unit sprayed Blue Star throughout the apartment. The forensic agent reveals biological evidence that's been cleaned up or is invisible to the naked eye. When they turned off the lights and activated the chemical, the hallway lit up. Significant reactions everywhere. Blood had been cleaned, but not well enough. The case of Jasmine Pace's disappearance officially became a homicide investigation. But where was her body? Detectives pulled security camera footage from the apartment building and surrounding businesses. The timeline they pieced together revealed Jason Chen's movements, and they hoped it would show where he'd taken Jasmine. Her white Chevrolet Equinox was captured turning into the apartment parking lot before midnight on November 22nd. Hours later, the same vehicle left the complex, but this time a figure in a light-colored hoodie was driving. The driver went to Signal View condominiums where the SUV was later found and got picked up by a dark Prius, likely a rideshare service. The Prius returned the driver to Jason's apartment building at 8:30 p.m. on November 23rd. A ring camera from the apartment next to an exit door captured Jason Chen leaving the building multiple times that day. At 8:27 p.m., 3 minutes before someone in a light hoodie drove Jasmine's car away, Jason was seen exiting through that same door. But other trips Jason made that day revealed even more damning evidence. Security footage from the Signal Mountain Walmart showed him shopping alone that morning, purchasing bandages, peroxide, and cleaning products. The overhead camera provided a clear view of his white sneakers, the same shoes later found concealed outside the apartment. And get this, he shoplifted too, running expensive items through self-checkout as asparagus to avoid paying full price. A criminal trying to save a few dollars while covering up the crime of his life. That evening, he stopped at Walgreens on North Market Street for paper towels, more cleaning supplies, for an apartment that must have been a scene of devastation. At almost 6 p.m. on the 23rd, security cameras captured a figure in that distinctive white hoodie struggling with a large suitcase. The person dragged it from the front door toward the parking lot with visible difficulty, the weight clearly substantial. Moments later, Jason Chen's black Toyota Camry left the complex. Detectives traced Jasmine's phone data. Her device had traveled to Walmart with Jason that morning, even though he shopped alone. The phone's GPS revealed where he drove after loading that heavy suitcase into his car. Suck Creek Road, a winding route that ran parallel to a riverbank, isolated and dark, even during daylight hours. Jason went shopping at Walmart that morning, bought cleaning supplies, bandages, peroxide. Then he went to Walgreens for paper towels. Then at 6 p.m., he dragged a heavy suitcase to his car and drove to a remote riverbank. All while Jasmine's family was desperately trying to find her. All while he was texting from her phone pretending she was alive. What kind of person does that? On December 1st, investigators walked along that riverbank on Suck Creek Road, searching for what they knew they'd find but prayed they wouldn't. Then they spotted it. The suitcase, inside, wrapped in multiple plastic layers, 3 trash bags. They found 98-pound Jasmine Pace. She had been bound in a highly restrictive manner, specifically designed to prevent any movement. Her right arm was cuffed to her right ankle. Her left ankle was linked to her right elbow. The restraints weren't police issued. They were flimsier, the kind someone might buy online. The chain on one pair was broken. When news of how Jasmine was found reached the Chattanooga community, people were horrified. One person online said, and I quote, "Her arm shackled to one ankle? Good Lord." Another said, "I wish I could unread the headline." Someone else wrote, "It's a terrible day to have functioning eyes." The details were almost too much to process. An autopsy revealed that Jasmine had sustained multiple fatal injuries. She had been stabbed no less than 60 times, the wounds concentrated on the upper left side of her body. Dr. Stephen Cogwell, the Hamilton County medical examiner, concluded that based on wound locations, Jasmine had been in a fetal position during the attack. The restraints found on her body had likely been applied while she was still alive, incapacitating her so she couldn't fight back or escape. Now, I need to address something that bothered a lot of people. Neighbors heard a scream around 2 in the morning. Around the same time, Jasmine sent that location pin to her mother, but nobody called the police. Nobody knocked on the door. Nobody did anything. People in the Chattanooga community compared this to the murder of Kitty Genovese, the New York woman whose attack was witnessed by neighbors who didn't intervene. It's called the bystander effect. People assume someone else will call, or they convince themselves it's probably nothing, or they don't want to get involved. But here's the thing. One person shared that a good neighbor once saved their aunt's life from an abusive boyfriend. The neighbor heard her screaming, kicked in the door, and got her out. Even fixed the door later. That's what a good neighbor does. Another person shared their own experience. They said they'd been beaten, screamed for help, even blew their car horn 3 times long and 3 times short, which stands for SOS, multiple times without anyone calling the law for them. So maybe it's not surprising that Jasmine's screams went unanswered. But it's still heartbreaking. If just one person had called 911 that night, maybe things would have been different. Jason Chen was arrested on November 29th at his parents' home in Nolanville. Officers noticed lacerations on his right hand and feet, injuries consistent with a violent struggle. And here's something that made a lot of people angry. Jason had already tried to flee. He went to the Nashville airport. He had family in China. People in the community couldn't believe he was even given a bond. One person wrote, "There should be no bond because he fled to Nashville before. He has family in China. He could get away." Another person said, "He literally went to the Nashville airport. There's no way he's beating this charge. Why wouldn't he flee?" The bond was eventually set at $5 million. A search of his room revealed a black backpack containing handwritten notes. Jason had been preparing his story, rehearsing what he'd tell police. The notes claimed he had last seen Jasmine on November 19th. They'd spoken on the 22nd. He wrote that she had a history of running away, that an ex had a restraining order against her, that she'd been homeless, He even suggested her mother might be an alcoholic. All of it designed to paint Jasmine as an unpredictable runaway nobody should worry about. Every word a lie. Inside a glasses case in his backpack, detectives found Jasmine's SIM card. He'd removed it from her phone, trying to control any communication that might reveal what he'd done. His own phone data told the real story. A photo of Jasmine in his bathroom taken the night she disappeared. Screenshots of text messages he'd gotten from her, though the actual messages had been deleted. On the morning after he took her out, he sent her a photo with the message, "Slept like a baby." The photo's metadata revealed it was taken 2 years earlier. Later that day, he texted her again. "Hey, are we still good for dinner tonight?" Pretending she was alive, creating a digital trail to support his lies. To a woman he had connected with on Tinder, he messaged, "I guess we're dating now," while Jasmine allegedly still lay dead in his bedroom. To friends later that night, he arranged to play Call of Duty online. He just needed to finish cleaning up his apartment first. The absolute nerve of this man, playing video games after what he did. Before I tell you about the trial and the defense strategy that will make you sick, if you're still watching, hit that subscribe button, because what comes next, you're not going to believe. When Jason Chen's trial began in January 2025, his defense attorney shocked the courtroom on day one. He didn't fight for his client's innocence. Jason Chen took Jasmine Pace's life, attorney Josh Wise told the jury, but he didn't do it with premeditation. The strategy was clear. Jason faced life without parole if convicted of first-degree homicide. His only hope was convincing the jury this was voluntary manslaughter, a crime of passion committed in the heat of the moment. The defense presented a scenario that seemed almost insulting in its simplicity. Jason and Jasmine had been drinking wine late into the night. When Jasmine went to get another bottle, she heard Tinder notifications on Jason's phone. Multiple notifications. She became angry, attacked him with a broken wine glass. He grabbed a kitchen knife from the bedside table where he'd left it after opening a wine bottle earlier, and defended himself. Multiple fatal injuries, all defensive. That was their story. Then, according to this version, Jason panicked. He applied the restraints to make Jasmine's body fit inside the plastic layers in the suitcase. The binding wasn't to incapacitate her during the attack. They were just for disposal convenience. Can you believe they actually argued this? Prosecutor Cody Womp methodically destroyed this narrative piece by piece. Dr. Coggle testified about the wound patterns. Jasmine had been in a fetal position, concentrated injuries on one side of her body. She'd tried to defend herself with her left hand, but her right hand showed no significant defensive injuries because her right hand couldn't move. It was bound in that highly restrictive manner. The restraints weren't applied after death. They were used to incapacitate her while Jason subjected her to a frenzied attack. There was no alcohol in Jasmine's system. No wine had been consumed for hours before her death. The drinking story was a complete fabrication. And those Tinder notifications that supposedly provoked Jasmine's attack? Data from the app showed Jason received exactly 0 Tinder notifications that entire day. Another lie designed to justify the tragedy. Courtney Brewer lived in the apartment below Jason's. She testified about being startled awake around 2 a.m. on November 23rd. A scream, a female voice, distressed and emphatic, but not quite angry. Then footsteps, multiple people running toward the front door. 7 minutes later, at 2:18 a.m., Jasmine managed to send her mother that dropped location pin. 7 minutes during which she knew she was in terrible danger. 7 minutes during which she tried to escape, tried to survive, tried to leave some evidence of where she was and what was happening. She ran for the door. Neighbors heard it slam. Jason caught her. Then he spent those 7 minutes restraining her, binding her into a position where she couldn't fight back. A position that would allow him to inflict excessive violence, while she could do nothing but curl into a fetal ball and try to protect herself with one hand. This wasn't a crime of passion, This was premeditated cruelty. Jasmine tried to run. She got to the door. Neighbors heard it slam. She tried to send her location to her mother, and then Jason spent 7 minutes restraining her, binding her hands and feet so she couldn't move, and then stabbed her 60 times while she was helpless. And his defense tried to call this self-defense. Do you think the jury bought that for even 1 second? Tell me in the comments. Defense attorneys tried to raise doubt about crime scene contamination. Yes, Katrina Pace had entered the apartment multiple times before it was officially processed. Yes, she'd moved things, taken electronics, searched for her daughter while police did nothing. But as one juror later explained, it didn't matter. The defense had already admitted Jason ended Jasmine's life. The only question was whether he planned it or reacted impulsively to provocation. The physical evidence answered that question definitively. The juror said, every single person who went into that apartment had a part in contamination. But it kind of didn't matter on our deliberations, because we already knew what was admitted, that he had murdered her. The jury heard 6 days of testimony. They saw the surveillance footage, the phone records, the crime scene photos. They heard about Jason casually playing Call of Duty with friends after the murder, telling them he just needed to finish cleaning his apartment first. They learned about him messaging a woman on Tinder hours after Jasmine died, saying, I guess we're dating now. Jury deliberation began at 4:15 p.m. They returned with a verdict just after 5, less than an hour. Guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. During the sentencing phase, Jason's mother made an emotional plea through a translator. He is a very good child, she said. He is not a bad person. I pray that the judge and jury will give him a chance so he can go home and restart his life. And you know what's ironic? The community noticed it too. Jason's mother also said she was scared for her son's safety in prison. One person from Chattanooga wrote online, the killer's mother said she's scared for her son's safety. Well, isn't that incredibly ironic? Another person responded, I have a suspicion that's a justified concern. Someone else wrote, I wouldn't mind going to jail just to say hello. The community had no sympathy for Jason Chen. None. Defense attorney Josh Wise asked the jury to offer Jason hope of redemption, to let him seek parole when he reached 73 years old. You're not tasked with forgiving Jason Chen or even excusing his actions, he argued. You are tasked with ensuring justice, a justice tempered with mercy. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. The crime was especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. It involved prolonged suffering and extreme physical abuse beyond what was necessary to cause death. Jason Chen would die in prison. He showed no emotion at the verdict. Looking back at this investigation, one fact stands out above all others. If Katrina and Travis Pace had trusted the police to do their job, this case might never have been solved. The initial police response was worse than inadequate. It was negligent. Officers were called to the Signal View condominium's parking lot where Jasmine's car sat abandoned. They took a report and left. When Katrina called the number from Jasmine's phone records and Jason Chen lied directly to police about his last contact with her, they did nothing. Even after discovering Jasmine's belongings inside Jason's apartment, even after neighbors reported hearing a violent disturbance at exactly the time Jasmine sent that location pin. Police initially refused to obtain a search warrant. It took Katrina entering that apartment herself multiple times, gathering evidence, creating a situation that finally forced law enforcement to act. She did the investigating. She tracked the GPS on her daughter's car. She pulled phone records. She connected Jason Chen to the crime scene and refused to let police ignore what was happening. This case exposed a fundamental flaw in how law enforcement handles missing person reports. The policy that adults have the right to disappear sounds reasonable in theory, but in practice it becomes an excuse for inaction. When family members present clear evidence that something is wrong, when they identify suspects who are lying about their contact with the missing person, when they locate belongings in suspicious places, the response shouldn't be adults can disappear if they want to. The response should be investigation, real investigation, not taking a report and leaving frustrated parents to do the detective work themselves. How many other families have been told adults have the right to disappear when clear warning signs existed? How many investigations have stalled because police departments prioritize policy over instinct, procedure over common sense? Here's something that bothered a lot of people in Chattanooga. This case never became national news. One person from the community wrote, "The Jasmine Pace murder is the kind of case that often makes national headlines. I'm frankly surprised it hasn't. Jasmine was truly an innocent victim and, by all accounts, a wonderful, intelligent, beautiful young woman. Rest in peace, Jasmine Pace. You deserve so much better."